เมื่อเช้าสอบไป2 ชั่วโมงแล้วก็พูดตลอดบ่ายนี้อีก3 ชั่วโมงก็เลยรู้สึกว่าเสียงเริ่มแห้งไปบ้างนะคะถ้าสมมติว่าไม่ได้ยินเนาะก็บอกนะอินทรัพได้โอเคlet's talk about the first topic. Okay, the first topic is about material growth. Alright, so after you study this topic, you have to know about bacterial growth and growth rates of bacteria. And also you have to know about factors affecting bacterial growth. For example, temperature, pH, nutrients, something like that. And then you have to know if you want to cultivate organism, I mean you want to cultivate or you want to grow bacteria, how you can do it. Okay, you have to prepare media and environmental conditions that's suitable for bacteria to grow them. Okay. And the last topic about bacterial metabolisms. So from this study, you have to know how energy produced in bacteria. Okay. Let's start with bacterial growth. Okay. You remember last time I talked about cells, bacterial cells. They're very small, only 1 to 2 micrometers. Remember? And one cell can do everything, including reproduce themselves. So, when we talk about bacterial growth, that means they have to increase cellular constituents, and then the chain will expand or increase in cell size. And after that, everything's ready, so they multiply themselves from 1 cell to 2 cells. So they increase in number. That's why when we talk about bacterial growth, it means bacteria can increase their number. For example, if we start with one bacterium, okay, we will start with 1 bacterium. And after 30 minutes, we have 2 bacteria. That means bacterial growth. Okay? So when we talk about growth of bacteria, this means increase in their cell numbers. And how they increase their cell number? They multiply themselves by binary fission process. What does it mean, binary fission? Okay, binary fission starts with the bacteria expand the size. How they expand the size? They duplicate DNA. They duplicate everything. I mean, ribosome, cytoplasm, and everything. That's why bacteria expand their size. And after that, the bacteria will form host wall or septate. Host wall or septate divide bacteria into 2 cells. They make 1 copy for each cell, and also ribosome and cytoplasm. And after they complete forming septate, they divide themselves into 2 cells. That's why we call binary fission. So you have to know the term binary fission. Okay, binary fission with bacteria divide themselves from 1 cell, they go into 2 cells. The other term that you have to know is generation time. Okay, what is generation time? Generation time is the interval of time between two cell division. Okay, it's easy to say that generation time is the time that bacteria use for division. Okay, use for division or use for dividing cells from 1 to 2 cells, or 2 cells to 4 cells, something like that. Or sometimes we call doubling time. Okay, doubling time or double. Okay, double 1 from 2 cells, 2 cells from 4 cells, something like that. So we call doubling time. Okay. Each bacteria have different doubling time. For example, I think you know this, E. coli or Escherichia coli. We talked about this last time. Okay, Escherichia coli can grow very rapid, okay, very fast. They need only 20 minutes for dividing cells. So the doubling time is only 20 minutes. When compared with Treponema pallidum, this bacteria cause syphilis. You know the term syphilis. The disease is sexually transmitted disease. It's one of sexually transmitted disease called syphilis. This syphilis caused by this bacteria, Treponema pallidum. Treponema pallidum have generation time or doubling time 1,980 minutes. What does it mean? They need about 2,000 minutes for dividing cells. So when you get infected with Treponema pallidum, you need, okay, you infected with 1 cell. You need 2,000 minutes. Treponema pallidum will form 2 cells. Okay? But at the same time, okay, you're infected with E. coli, just 1 cell. 20 minutes, you will have 2 cells of E. coli. 40 minutes, you have how many? 4. 1 hour, you have 8. See that difference? So bacteria that have shorter generation time will cause acute infection. You know, acute infection. That means when you get infected with bacteria, maybe 1 or 2 days you have pathologies. You have signs and symptoms of infections. But if you got infected with bacteria that have a longer generation time, for example, Treponema pallidum, you need about a week or maybe more to express signs and symptoms of the infections. Okay. For example, when you get, Treponema pallidum is a sexually transmitted disease. Okay. When you got infected with Treponema pallidum by, well, okay, you have okay, you got infected, okay, with Treponema pallidum. Okay, you just okay, don't worry about that, but later on, about 2 weeks or a month, you have scar on genital organ. See? But maybe you cannot remember what's going on about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Alright? Okay. But if you have E. coli, you got infected with E. coli, you have E. coli about 10 cells you eat lunch, you have lunch with E. coli, about 10 cells. Okay? We are, okay, I think before 6 p.m. you have diarrhea. Okay? That's rapid growing. Okay? And the other term is growth rate. Okay. Growth rate is the change in number of cells per unit of time. So the bacteria that have shortened generation time, they have highest growth rate. Okay. While bacteria that have longer generation time, they slow growth rate. And because we know that bacteria divide itself by binary fission, so you can calculate the number of cells up if you know generation time. Okay, for example, I told you before that you got E. coli 10 cells. Okay, 1 p.m. you have 10 cells of E. coli, and you know that E. coli have 20 minutes generation time. So after 2 hours, how many E. coli you have? Okay, in 2 hours, how many generations they form? They have 20 minutes per generation. 1 hour, how many generations? 3. 6 hours, how many generations? 2 hours, how many generations? 6. Okay. 1 generation from 1 cell, they form 2 cells. The second generation, 2 cells form 4. Okay. Third generation, how many cells? 8. Fourth generation, 16. Fifth generation, 32. Okay. Sixth generation, 64. 6. If you know generation time, you can guess how many bacteria at certain time. Okay? You can calculate by yourself, or you can use this formula. Okay? NT, the populations of cells at certain time. Okay? And N0 is the initial population. And this small n, okay, means the number of generations that I told you. Okay, so you can calculate the number of cells at certain time by using this formula, or you can change this formula to log number if you need. No, okay. And the same formula, just this is exponential and this one is a log. Okay. Okay, so you have to know about generation time and how to calculate the number of cells. And then you can guess the number that cause pathogenesis or not. Okay. You know that bacteria grow. But how can you see? Okay, sometimes you cannot see bacteria if you have only small amount of bacteria. But if there are a lot of number of bacterial cells, you can see it. For example, if the bacteria grow in the liquid medium, okay, I have to tell you. Medium is the nutrient for bacteria. Is nutrients, the nutrients for bacteria to grow. Okay, if the bacteria grow in liquid medium, you can guess that growth because they turn turbidity or cloudy. Okay, so growth in liquid medium can increase turbidity. And if you grow bacteria on solid medium, for example, on medium that put in a plate or petri dish, okay, then no liquid that bacteria can sustain. So when bacteria divide itself, 1 cell from 2 cells, 2 cells from 4, 8, 16, 22, 42, 44, 64, and so on. They cannot suspend in liquid, so they just push together, stick it together, and form these we call colonies. Okay, we call colony. So if bacteria grow on solid medium, you can know by seeing colony. Okay, colony is a group of bacterial cells that they stick together. Okay, but one colony formed from one cell. Okay, one colony formed from one cell. So colony is a group of cells formed from one cell or one clone. Okay. And bacterial colonies is the characteristic of each bacteria. I mean, one bacteria show bacterial colonies. The other bacteria will form another kind of colonies. For example, in different color or different size or stages. Okay, for example, this picture, you see, there's a yellow colony and white colony. That means there's two kinds of bacteria in this plate. Okay, got it? Bacterial colony is the characteristic of each bacteria. Okay, different colonies, I mean different colony patterns come from different bacteria. Okay. For example, in this picture, you have two kinds of colony. One is yellow colony and the other one is white colony. That means you have two kinds of bacteria in this plate. Right? Okay. The other forms of bacterial growth we call biofilms. This one causes a lot of troubles for you guys, okay? Because many oral bacteria form biofilm that cause plaque, okay? That cause plaque in your oral cavity. Because, okay, bacteria stick on surface of some things, okay? For example, your teeth, and then they make biofilm. Another bacteria stick with biofilm and produce biofilm also, and then they stick together, and they will form large biofilm. The problem is when you use disinfectants just clean up or just destroy bacteria that on the surface, but on the inner biofilm they cannot kill. Okay, that's the problem about bacterial biofilm. Okay, just bacterial growth. Okay. Any questions? You understand what I told you? Okay. All right. The other topic. What? Okay. ขอไปฟิล์มบ้างalright. Okay. ไบโอฟิล์มนะคะเป็นการที่แบคทีเรียเจริญบนเซอร์เฟซโอเคเจริญบนเซอร์เฟซ แล้วมันจะผลิตสารบางอย่างออกมาเช่นโพลีแซคคาไรด์ช่วยให้มัน attach กับ surface ดีขึ้นแบคทีเรียตัวที่หนึ่งเกาะปั๊บสร้างโพลีแซคคาไรด์พอมันแบ่งตัวมันก็สร้างตัวที่สองก็สร้างโพลีแซคคาไรด์เหมือนกันแบ่งตัวอีกทีได้4เซลล์แบ่งตัวอีกทีได้8แบ่งตัวอีกทีได้16แบ่งไปแต่ทุกตัวสร้างไบโอฟิล์มเป็นไงคะหนาขึ้นไม่หลุดนอกจากไม่หลุดแล้วสมมติว่าหนูใส่น้ำยาฆ่าเชื้อดิสแบนแบนลงไปมันก็จะสลายเฉพาะตัวบนที่ผิวแต่ตัวข้างล่างมันถูกไบโอฟิล์มป้องกันไว้ก็ไม่สลายไปเห็นไหมเห็นเนาะซึ่งตรงนี้ที่อาจารย์บอกว่ามันเป็นปัญหาของพวกเราเพราะว่าแบคทีเรียในช่องปากหลายชนิดเยอะมากเลยมันสร้างไบโอฟิล์มโดยเฉพาะ Streptococcus mutans จำได้ไหมเรียนเมื่ออาทิตย์ที่แล้วซึ่งตัวนี้ทำให้เกิดพลาสนะคะในช่องปากนอกจากทำให้เกิดพลาสแล้วอีกอันนึงที่ตามมาก็คือฟันผุหรือ dental caries นะคะเดี๋ยวเราจะได้เรียนต่อเพราะว่ามันสร้างสารบางอย่างเก็บไว้ก่อนนะคุยที่ฟังอีกทีโอเคเนาะค่ะ alright the other way is about bacterial growth curve disinfectants โทษที disinfectants คือสารที่ใช้ในการฆ่าเชื้อสารที่ใช้ในการฆ่าเชื้ออย่างเช่นเมื่อวันก่อนที่เราทอล์กกันในแลบเราก็ใช้แอลกอฮอล์ในการฆ่าเชื้อแล้วออกมาอย่างนี้เป็นต้นเราเรียก disinfectants นะคะ move on bacterial growth curve. Okay, when you put bacteria into nutrients, I mean liquid medium. Okay, you put bacteria into liquid medium. When bacteria have enough food, environment, suitable environment, they multiply themselves. And if you count bacteria versus time, you can see bacteria will increase the number. Okay, but they did not increase the number in exponential phase along with the time. They just produce exponential phase of growth at a certain time. Okay, that's why we call bacterial growth phase. Okay, when we start putting bacteria into nutrients, the first phase, the bacteria just see, okay, that if suitable environment or not, or they have enough nutrients or not, so they just stay. They didn't multiply themselves. They just look around and just expand themselves for reproduce. But the number is not increased. We call this phase as lag phase. And after the bacteria know that environment is good, nutrient is good, so they multiply themselves. When you count bacteria, you see that bacteria will increase the number a lot as exponential growth. That's why we call exponential phase or log phase. And after a while, the nutrients will deplete. A lot of toxic waste are formed. So some bacteria that's stronger, they can multiply themselves, but some bacteria that weaker, they just die. That's why the number is stable, because stationary phase. And after that, every bacteria die because lack of oxygen, lack of nutrients, something like that, a lot of waste, toxic waste, so the number is decline. That's why we call decline phase or death phase. So we divide growth phase into three or four phases: lack, long, stationary, and decline phase. Okay. There's a detail in each phase. See, lack phase is the first time that you introduce bacteria into the growth medium. So they just checking out if environment is okay, nutrients is okay. So they just prepare themselves for reproduce themselves. The number is stable. So if you want to stop the growth of bacteria, you have to put bacteria into lack phase. Okay. For example, you didn't give them water or just nutrients, so they just stay in lack phase. Long phase or exponential phase is the growth phase that bacteria doubles the number. Okay, that show rapid growth. But in this phase, bacteria sensitive to some environment, for example, in antibiotics environment. So if you want to kill bacteria, this is the good time to kill them. Okay? Because when they produce themselves, the membrane or something like that, they love to pass everything into cells. So it's easy to break down the cells in this phase. Okay, that's why I told you that the microbes or bacteria are sensitive to adverse effects. In stationary phase, from log phase, bacteria reproduce themselves. So when they reproduce themselves, they need a lot of nutrients. And after they make a lot of cells, their space is strict. Okay? A lot of waste are produced by bacteria. Oxygen is used for many bacteria. So in this phase, lack of nutrients, lack of water, not enough space, oxygen depletion, and maybe pH change because of toxic waste that bacteria produce. Stronger bacteria can survive, but weaker bacteria will die. So the population is stabilized. The new cells and the dead cells are equal. In this phase, some bacteria that can produce spore, they will produce spore in this phase. Okay. You remember last time that I told you bacteria with spore can tolerate with heat, with salt, with many things. Okay, it's hard to destroy the bacteria that form in the spore. Okay, and in the next phase, the number will decline because the lack of nutrients, toxic waste built up. So the number of dead cells is more than growing cells. Sometimes we call decline phase. Okay. And this slide show you the characteristic of cells that into each phase. Okay. In that phase, bacterial cells are trying to expand themselves, so the size of bacteria is maximized. While in log phase, they divide themselves, so cells are small and uniform. In stationary phase, some cells can form endospore, some cells will die, something like that, so irregular shape. And in the death phase or decline phase, like aging phase, so the irregular shape. Okay. You got it? Any questions? All right. Okay. Just one copy. Okay. And you know about bacterial growth. And then we move on to cultivation. Okay. How to cultivate bacteria. Okay. Why we have to cultivate bacteria? Some bacteria we want to culture them or to make them grow, so you can study their characteristics. Okay. Or if you want to study about antibacterial properties, something like that, so you have to grow bacteria and then test for your antibacterial agent, something like that. Okay. So we talk about, for now I will tell you about how to grow bacteria. So first, you have to know factors that affect bacterial growth. Okay. When you want to grow bacteria, you have to study that environmental condition is suitable for bacteria or not, or nutrients, food for bacteria is good or not. So these are all the factors that affect bacterial growth. Okay. For example, moisture and drying, nutrients, temperature, pH, osmotic pressure, and also atmosphere. Okay, first, about moisture. You know, bacteria need water for what? For dissolve nutrients and then pass that nutrient into cells. So water is needed for bacterial growth. And water may be in form of moisture. Okay. Bacteria need water for growth differently. Some bacteria need a lot of water, so they will die if water is not okay. For example, Chikungunya polyp that I told you that cause syphilis, okay, that's very sensitive to water. I mean that if there's shortage of water, they cannot live longer. Okay. Why Staphylococcus? Staphylococcus, they can stay for a month if there's not enough water. Okay. And some form of bacterial cells, for example, spore forming, they can resist to shortage of water for a long time. So the need for water depends on different bacteria and different stage of bacteria. Okay. The other factor is about nutrients. Why bacteria need nutrients? They need nutrients for produce energy. You know, energy used for working. Okay. So bacteria needs nutrients for generate energy. and also for make cellular constituents. Remember, when they multiply themselves, they have to expand themselves and produce much more cellular constituents, DNA, RNA, cytoplasm, ribosome, and so on. Okay. So what kind of nutrients that bacteria need? The same as human. We need rice, we need protein, we need carbohydrate. Bacteria need also carbon, nitrogen as a form of carbohydrate or lipid of proteins. They need nitrogen as a form of proteins. They need sulfur for amino acid synthesis. They need phosphate for making DNA or RNA. And also they need minerals for activate some enzymes. Okay, that's all nutrients that bacteria needs. From the nutrients, I divide into two types, macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients that mean nutrients that bacteria needs for large quantities. So they use these nutrients for making cell. For example, peptidoglycan cell wall, phospholipid bilayer, something like that. So this part of bacterial cells, they need carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen as a nutrients. Okay. The other type of nutrients is micronutrients. That means they need just small amount, but they need just small amount, because they use it for activated enzyme. They use for some pigment production, something like that. So these minerals, some minerals, for example, manganese, magnesium, zinc, for enzyme activation. Okay. The other terms that I want you to know is about this term. Fastidious bacteria. Okay. Fastidious bacteria means bacteria that need some complex or special nutrients for growth. Okay. They don't just need only carbon, nitrogen, or protein or lipid, but they need some vitamins, some compounds. For example, they need blood for growth. Okay. Blood, I mean human blood for growth, because in blood there are a lot of nutrients. So some bacteria that need special nutrients for growth we call fastidious bacteria. They need special nutrients, special vitamins, for example. Okay. I mean special nutrients or special vitamins, sometimes we call growth factor. I mean vitamin, riboflavin, something like that. These are growth factors that needs for fastidious organisms. Okay. This you know what kind of nutrients that bacteria need to grow. Okay. And how these nutrients come into cells. Different kind of nutrients come into bacterial cell in different pathways. Okay, I divide mechanisms that bacteria put nutrients into cells into three groups. Okay, the first is diffusion. Okay, diffusions are passive diffusions. diffuse means nutrients come from a higher concentration into smaller concentration, okay, without use of energy. Okay, just flow from higher concentration to lower concentration. In this kind of diffusion, I divide into two types. The first is simple diffusion, just that I told you before, from higher concentration to lower concentration, just flow, like water flow. In facilitated diffusions, it's the same, from higher concentration to lower concentration, but they have something that facilitates, help them to pass these molecules into cells quicker. We call facilitated diffusion. Okay. The other types of mechanism is active transport and group translocation. These mechanisms need energies to take nutrients into bacterial cells because they come from lower concentration to higher concentration in the cells. Okay. This is the detail of each mechanism. Okay. Passive diffusion is molecule move from higher concentration to lower concentration. So this mechanism used for uptake of nutrients that very small molecules. For example, glycerol, a small size of molecule. Okay. For the facilitated diffusions, they pass from higher concentration to lower concentration, but then have carryover to facilitate. So the rate of facilitated diffusion is faster than simple passive diffusion because they have carrier protein to help. For example of carrier protein, is permease. Permease is the enzyme that helps molecules to pass through cell membrane to inner cells. Okay, these features show active transport. Okay. Outside and inside. So inside they have a lot of molecules. Higher concentration, but cells still need this molecule. So they move from outside into the cells by using energy. For example, when bacteria need sodium into the cells, they use active transport. Active transport needs energy to pass molecule into the cells. And this mechanism is the same as active transport. But they change the molecule that pass to the cell change a little bit, change conformation a little bit. We call group translocation. Okay. The molecule that pass through the cells, they change conformation by mechanism from inside the cell. Okay, let's see this example. bacteria need to put glucose into the cells for growth. Okay, but glucose cannot pass through cell membrane or cytoplasmic membrane by diffusion. Glucose have to change polar by change to glucose phosphate. Okay, so glucose phosphate can pass through the cells, and how glucose change to glucose phosphate. Bacterial cells will split phosphate into glucose outside the cell by using another enzyme. Phosphoenol pyruvate change to pyruvate and split phosphate, put phosphate into outside, and then phosphate go with glucose as glucose phosphate. So glucose phosphate can put it through cell. That's why we call group translocation. The outer molecule that move into the cells by bacterial cells. Okay, you confused? พยักหน้าหมายความว่าขออีกทีโอเค sorry group translocation นะคะนี้พลังงานเหมือนกับใน active transport เพราะว่าผ่านมาจากที่โมเลกุลสูงโมเลกุลต่ำมาสู่โมเลกุลสูงต้องผลักพลังงานเข้ามาทีนี้ในการผลักเข้ามามันไม่เหมือนกับใน active transport เพราะ active transport มันเป็นโมเลกุลเล็กๆอย่างเช่นโพแทสเซียมแต่อันนี้โมเลกุลใหญ่กว่าเช่นกลูโคสแลคโตสเพราะฉะนั้นโมเลกุลใหญ่เนี่ยเซลล์เมมเบรนมันไม่ยอมให้เข้าอยู่แล้วมันในเรื่องของโมเลกุลและในเรื่องของประจุจำได้นะเซลล์เมมเบรนคือฟอสโฟไลปิดไบเลเยอร์นะคะมันหันด้านที่มีขั้วออกข้างนอกเพราะฉะนั้นนะคะมันจะมีเรื่องของแรงผลักด้วยเรื่องของประจุมันจะเอากลูโคสหรือแลคโตสเข้าสู่เซลล์จะทำยังไงมันก็จะต้องเปลี่ยนให้เป็นรูปที่จะเข้ามาได้เช่นกลูโคสฟอสเฟตทีนี้จะเปลี่ยนยังไงให้เป็นกลูโคสฟอสเฟตเพราะกลูโคสฟอสเฟตสามารถที่จะเข้าสู่เซลล์เมมเบรนได้เซลล์เมมเบรนยอมให้เข้าแล้วเพราะมันมีประจุประจุดึงเข้ามาว่าจะเปลี่ยนยังไงล่ะมันต้องหาฟอสเฟตตรงบริเวณเซลล์เมมเบรนเนี่ยนะคะก็จะมีเอนไซม์ตัวนึงถ้าคุณจะได้ฟอสโฟอีโนไพรูเอทเป็นฟอสเฟตนะคะในช่วงของไบไซโตพลาซึมเดี๋ยวจะได้เรียนต่อจริงๆก็เรียนนะจากไบโอเคมีเพราะตรงนี้แหละนะคะฟอสโฟอีโนไพรูเอทจะถูกเปลี่ยนเป็นไพรูเอทตรงนี้จะเป็นฟอสเฟตออกมาจำได้ไหมซึ่งฟอสเฟตอันนี้จะถูกอินคอร์ปอเรตเข้ากับ ATP ได้เป็น ATP ขณะเดียวกันขณะที่มันอินคอร์ปอเรตเข้ามานั้นเนี่ยมันก็จะได้ฟอสเฟตไปดึงเข้ามากับกลูโคสเป็นกลูโคสฟอสเฟตเข้ามาในเซลล์ได้นี่คือลักษณะของ group translocation ซึ่งก็จะใช้กับการพาพวกน้ำตาลเข้าสู่เซลล์ของแบคทีเรียครับผมทันไหมคือกรุ๊ป translocation นะคะจะเป็นการพาสารอาหารบางอย่างเข้าสู่เซลล์การพาสารอาหารเข้าสู่เซลล์ด้วยกลวิธีต่างๆไม่เหมือนกันยกตัวอย่างเช่นถ้าโมเลกุลอย่างเช่นกลีเซอรอลนั่นกลีเซอรอลถ้าหนูจำโครงสร้างของกลีเซอรอลได้กลีเซอรอลจะไม่มีขั้วนะคะไม่มีขั้วเผอิญโมเลกุลเล็กมันก็เข้ามาแบบ passive diffusion จบแต่ถ้าโมเลกุลบางอย่างนะคะอย่างเช่นโปรตีนบางอย่างเข้าสู่เซลล์พวกอะมิโนแอซิดเข้าสู่เซลล์ยากมันก็จะต้องมีกระบวนการช่วยก็อย่างเช่นมีเพอร์มิเอสพาเอาอะมิโนแอซิดเข้ามานั่นก็คือ facilitated diffusion ค กระบวนการที่3ก็คือพวกที่มีประจุอย่างเช่นโพแทสเซียมโซเดียมเวลาโพแทสเซียมโซเดียมเข้าสู่เซลล์บางทีมันไม่ได้มาแค่ตัวเปล่ามันจะเอาน้ำเข้ามาด้วยเพราะฉะนั้นในกรณีมันจะต้องมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงบางอย่างต้องใช้พลังงานผลักเข้ามาเพราะว่าภายในเซลล์จะมี concentration ของสารสูงอยู่แต่เซลล์ยังต้องการใช้ก็จะต้องถีบมันเข้ามาก็ต้องใช้พลังงานก็คือ active transport ทีนี้ในบางกระบวนการในบางสารบางอย่างเช่นพวกกลูโคสแลคโตสโมเลกุลพอสมควร C6H12O6 แถมมีประจุด้วยนะเพราะฉะนั้นเซลล์มันเบรนไม่ยอมให้เข้ามาง่ายๆต้องมีกระบวนการบางอย่างก็คือกรุ๊ปทรานสโลเคชันคล้ายกับว่ามันจะต้องมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงโครงสร้างของกลูโคสไปที่เป็นเพื่อให้เซลล์มันเบรนยอมให้เข้ามาได้ซึ่งการเปลี่ยนแปลงนี้มีการเปลี่ยนแปลงรูปโครงสร้างคือต้องเป็นฟอสเฟตกรุ๊ปเป็นเกาะนะนั่นฟอสเฟตมาจากไหนล่ะฟอสเฟตก็มาจากเซลล์นะคะแบคทีเรียนะคะผลักมันออกไปผลักออกมาจากไหนอยู่ดีๆมันก็มาจากกระบวนการไกลโคลิซิสนั่นเองที่ผมเคยเรียนมาก่อนนะสุดท้ายจากการสร้างพลังงานนั้นเนี่ยในไกลโคลิซิสฟอสโฟอินอคูเลตถูกเปลี่ยนเป็นไพรูเวทก็จะสปริตฟอสเฟตกรุ๊ปมาฟอสเฟตกรุ๊ปจริงๆต้องไปรวมกับ ADP และ ATP ก็ไปรวมกับกลูโคสก็ผ่านกลูโคสเข้ามาด้วยแล้วก็พอสปริตออกเป็นฟอสเฟตตัวนี้ก็ไปจับกับ ADP และ ATP 2 ต่อนะคะนี่คือการเอาโมเลกุลพวกนี้เข้ามานะคะโอเคนี่คือบทสรุปดูกันเยอะๆนะคะบทสรุปของแต่ละกระบวนการนะโอเคนะมาร์กหน้านี้ไว้นะคะก็เป็นบทสรุปที่จะไปดูว่านั้นในแต่ละอันจะมีความแตกต่างกันยังไงนะคะโมเลกุลที่เข้ามาแต่ละอย่างจะไม่เหมือนกันนะโอเคค่ะเดี๋ยวให้เบรก5 นาทีเนาะแล้วเดี๋ยวมาต่อนะถ้ามีใครสงสัยตรงไหนมาถามได้อีกนะคะดีสิ
จังหวัดน้อย
Okay. The next factor that affect bacterial growth is the temperature. Okay, temperature. Okay, when you grow bacteria, you have to put them in optimum temperature. That means the temperature that promotes the fastest rate of growth. And that is suitable temperature for growth of bacteria. Okay. In optimum temperature, enzymatic reaction occurs. So metabolisms or the metabolisms occurs. Okay. So bacteria grow very quickly. If you increase temperature, okay, and you leave bacteria in that temperature, okay, for example, in higher temperature, proteins will denature. So enzyme cannot work. Enzyme in bacterial cells cannot work. So sometimes metabolisms cannot occur. So bacteria will die. The optimum the maximum temperature that still permits growth of bacteria we call maximum temperature. On the other hand, if you put bacteria into lower temperature, the metabolism rate is decreased because enzyme or metabolisms cannot work very well until bacteria will freeze themselves. The lowest temperature that bacteria still grow, we call minimum temperature. If you put bacteria in lower than minimum temperature, all the membranes, cell membranes will rigid and then cannot work. We call gelling membrane. Okay. When bacteria, cytoplasmic membrane cannot work, so all solute or sodium can move in and outside bacteria. Bacteria cannot maintain their shape and maybe die. Or sometimes enzymes still sit and they just stand still, they just didn't move. So metabolic rate will decrease. Okay. Okay. So in maximum temperature, when you put bacteria over maximum temperature, the bacteria will die. If you put bacteria lower than minimum temperature, maybe bacteria die, or maybe they just freeze themselves. They didn't grow. Okay. So if you want to grow bacteria, you have to put it in optimum temperature. Okay. The optimum temperatures of bacteria depends on type of bacteria. For example, if bacteria that can cause disease, human disease, the optimum temperature is about 30 to 37 degrees Celsius. Bacteria that love this environment, this temperature, we call mesophile. Okay, philes in Latin means love. Meso is medium, so medium temperature. They love medium temperature. Temperature range between 30 degrees Celsius to 37 degrees Celsius. That means human body temperature. Okay. So mesophile is the bacteria that can cause disease. Okay. Some bacteria love lower temperature, we call psychophile or psychototes. These bacteria can live in temperature below 30 degrees Celsius. For example, we will study they call Listeria. One bacteria named Listeria monocytogenes. They love in lower temperature, so they contaminate in frozen food. Okay, frozen food, seafood, and frozen, something like that. Some bacteria love higher temperature. We call thermophile or hyperthermophile. These bacteria can tolerate more than 60 degrees Celsius. So the bacteria that affect human body is about the mesophile that cause diseases in this group mesophile. Okay. The other factor is pH or hydrogen ion concentration. Many bacteria can live in neutral pH. pH range between 6.5 to 7.5, something like that. About 7 pH.7. This is called neutrophile. Bacteria that love acidic pH we call acidophile. For example, lactobacilli. Lactobacilli love acidic pH. Lactobacilli is one kind of bacteria that live in the non-oral cavity. Okay. The bacteria that can live in alkaline pH we call alkalophile. For example, Vibrio cholerae. Okay, this is an example of bacteria that cause cholera. In Thai we call ahiva. Ahiva takalo. Okay. The other factor is about osmotic pressure or osmolarity. Okay. Many bacteria can live in isotonic solution. What does it mean? Isotonic solution does mean that the concentrations of solute inside and outside are equal. So bacteria can live in this situation. But if you put bacteria in hypertonic solution, I mean concentration of solute outside is more than inside the cells. So water tries to move from inside the cells to outside cells and cause plasmolysis, which means the nature of plasma membrane or cytoplasmic membrane. So the cell will broken. Or plasmolysis. Okay. But some bacteria can live in hypertonic solution. This group called osmotolerant. That means bacteria that can grow in higher concentration of salt or sugar, or higher concentration of osmotic pressure, high osmotic pressure. But if bacteria can live in higher concentration of salt, we call halophile. you know why you have to know factor affecting bacterial growth? Why you have to know? Okay. Okay. You know that sometimes we want to inhibit the growth of bacteria. You don't want bacteria to grow. For example, you don't want bacteria to grow in your oral cavity and make dental caries. Okay? So you have to stop growing of this bacteria. You have to put them in unsuitable environment. For example, you have to put them in high concentration. For example, you use Colgate with salt, see, to kill this bacteria. Okay? Or you may use something like that as charcoal. Charcoal makes alkaline pH. That's why some bacteria will die. You know. So this is why we have to know about factor affecting the growth of bacteria. Okay. So that. Another factor is about presence or absence of gas. And is the environment, atmospheric environment. Okay. In environment, we have 70% of nitrogen, 20% of oxygen, and very small amount of carbon dioxide, about 1%. So the gas that has the most effect of growth is oxygen, about 20%. Nitrogen is inert gas, right? Oxygen is not inert. It's not inert. It's put in many metabolic pathways. Okay. Many bacteria, including human, need oxygen for metabolism, right? Okay. In bacteria that require oxygen for growth, we call aerobes. Okay, this term you have to know, aerobes. Aerobes mean organisms that need oxygen for growth. Okay, divided into obligate aerobe and micro aerobe. Okay, what is the difference between these two groups? Obligate aerobes, they need oxygen to grow. They cannot grow without oxygen. Okay? They need oxygen, about 20% of oxygen, I mean atmospheric oxygen. They need oxygen to grow. Without oxygen, they cannot grow. That means obligate aerobe. Obligate means strict. Okay? Micro aerobe. They need oxygen to grow, but in small amount, only 4 to 5% of oxygen. If the environment has more than 5% of oxygen, these bacteria cannot grow, they will die. Okay. Microaerobe, they need oxygen, but less amount of oxygen, only 4% to 5% of oxygen, that's all they need. More than that, they will die. Okay? For example, Campylobacter and Helicobacter. I think you may know Helicobacter. You know? Helicobacter pylori. They cause gastric ulcer, right? They can cause gastric ulcer because in stomach, in human stomach, there only about 5% of oxygen. So it's suitable for them to grow in this stomach. Okay. Some bacteria, they cannot tolerate in presence of oxygen, we call anaerobic. So bacteria in this group may die when they exposed to oxygen. We divide into two groups, obligate and aerobic, and aerotolerant and aerobic. Okay, obligate and aerobic. Obligate means weak. So if we put this bacteria in presence of oxygen, this bacteria will die. Okay. Another group is aerotolerant. Tolerant means tolerant. So they can tolerate in oxygen's atmosphere. But they did not use oxygen in metabolic pathway. They didn't use oxygen in metabolic pathway. For example, Clostridium perfringens. You know later. Clostridium is an anaerobe that can form spore. They can cause tissue damage, for example, gas gangrene and things like that. Okay. Another group of bacteria. They can live in presence of oxygen and can live without oxygen. This group we call facultative anaerobe. When presence of oxygen, they use one type of metabolic process for energy production. When absence of oxygen, they use another type of metabolic process. So they can live with oxygen and without oxygen environment. We call facultative anaerobe. The sample for this group is Staphylococcus. Remember this bacteria. On the presence of oxygen, for example, when they live on our skin, they use aerobic respiration for energy production. But if this bacteria in internal organs, for example, in intestinal tract, there's low amount of oxygen, very low amount of oxygen. They use fermentation for metabolic process. So these bacteria can live within and without oxygen. Okay, this picture represents how bacteria grow in tube and in tube. Okay. In obligate animal, they need oxygen. So you see bacteria grow heavily in the upper layer of the tube that is exposed to oxygen. In obligate animal, they don't want oxygen, so they grow in the deepest of the tube. Right? Aerotolerant animal, they can go along the tube because they use and even use oxygen for growing. In facultative anaerobe, you see bacteria based on the upper layer, but in lower layer they still have some bacteria, but less amount, because if there are presence of oxygen, they use aerobic respiration, which has more and more ATP. So bacteria grow very fast, so they dance into the upper part because they grow very fast, but in deeper part, they use fermentation with produce less energy and less ATP. Why some bacteria can live in presence of oxygen, but some bacteria cannot? Because they have enzyme. Some bacteria that can live in presence of oxygen, they have enzyme for detoxify toxic form of oxygen. For example, superoxide dismutase, catalase, or peroxidase. Okay. Because when bacteria use oxygen in metabolic process, oxygen when gain electron, they change to toxic form of oxygen, for example, peroxide anion, singlet of oxygen, or hydroxyl radical, which are toxic form of oxygen. This causes cell damage. So some bacteria have enzymes for change this toxic form to less toxic or non-toxic. Okay. For example, superoxide dismutase change peroxide radical to hydrogen peroxide and oxygen. Catalase change hydrogen peroxide to form water and oxygen. So bacteria that can live in presence of oxygen and use oxygen as electron acceptor in metabolic process, they have all these enzymes. Okay. Some bacteria have one enzyme, some bacteria have more than one, or two or three enzymes. Okay. For example, in Staphylococcus aureus, they have catalase superoxide dismutase. So they can live in presence of oxygen. Use oxygen as electron acceptor for aerobic respiration. And when toxic form produced, for example, superoxide radical or hydrogen peroxide, they use catalase and superoxide dismutase to change this toxic form to less or non-toxic form. Okay. Alright. Now, hey. If you want to culture bacteria that don't want oxygen, you can do it by using this type we call anaerobic jar. Okay, so in aerobic jar we use chemical to trap oxygen. So in this jar there is no oxygen. So bacteria that don't want oxygen can grow in this jar. Another time you can use some chemical, for example, thiocyanate or oxygenase for trap oxygen. Okay. Right. So we still can culture the bacteria that cannot use oxygen also. Why I have to show this? Because some students, when you want to do, I don't know how to call this, the senior project, something like that, and some students want to culture strep mutans or bacteria in oral cavity. So we have to know about this, how to culture this bacteria. The other type of bacteria, they need certain amount of carbon dioxide. Okay. In atmosphere, there's only 1% of carbon dioxide always, right? Some bacteria love more than that. Okay, for example, the bacteria named Neisseria that cause gonorrhea. Okay, is one of sexually transmitted disease, gonorrhea. หนองในโรคหนองในเดี๋ยวเราจะได้เรียนต่อนะคะThese bacteria need carbon dioxide to grow. Okay, they need about 5% carbon dioxide. Okay, how to culture them? We use this. We call candle jar. Why we call candle jar? You put candle in this, and then you frame it. Say, you remember when you frame it, they produce carbon dioxide. That's all. So you can use candle jar. Okay. This technique, okay, this American technique, okay, they use gas generator. This costs about 2,000 baht. This costs 1 baht. Okay. Alright. This is all about factor affecting bacterial growth. The other factor is nutrients or media. Okay, we call culture media. There are several types of media for culturing bacteria. Okay, when divided into form, we divide into solid and liquid media. Okay, solid is solid. Okay. Liquid just liquid. When you make liquid media, okay, when you want to make solid media from liquid media, you just put agar in through the media. What is agar? Agar is complex polysaccharide that used as solidifying agents. And bacteria cannot eat or metabolize agar. So bacteria didn't use agar as a food, just solidifying agent. Okay. Agar has the properties of liquefy at 100 degrees Celsius and solidify at 40 degrees Celsius. These are the types of media I will tell you later. Okay. One kind of media is enrichment media. Enrichment media is used for encourage growth of bacteria that you want to grow them. But other bacteria, we didn't care about that. Just want to grow the bacteria that you want to grow them, or desired bacteria. Other may grow or may not grow, we didn't consider. Okay. For example, if you want to grow bacteria in your oral cavity, they strep mutants. Okay, you just make little bit lower pH. Okay, other bacteria can grow or cannot grow, we didn't mind, but strep mutants can grow. Okay, this is called enrichment media. Selective media is the media that you use for suppress unwanted bacteria. Suppress unwanted, but encourage wanted bacteria. Okay. The other type of media is differential media. Differential media is used for distinguish colony types of bacteria. These are all the same media, but when you grow bacteria, different bacteria, they show different colonies. Okay, for example, some bacteria can use lactose and use lactose by fermentation and produce acid. So they change the color of bacteria to pink. Okay. Some bacteria cannot ferment lactose, so they cannot produce acid. The color of colony didn't change, something like that. So we call differential media. This type of media will show you in the lab part. Okay. When you grow bacteria, and you want to know that bacteria grow or not, what you have to do? So you have to count bacteria, right? You have to count them. As I told you before, growth means increase in cell number, right? So if you want to know bacteria growth or not, you have to count bacteria. If the number is decreased, so you know that bacteria still grow. Okay? So go to this topic, measurement of bacterial growth. Okay? We can measure by count cells or measurement of cell number. Okay? Or you can measure cell mass, or you can measure metabolic products or metabolic activity of the cells. Okay. For the cell number measurement, you can make a direct microscopic count. Okay. Tomorrow you learn about how to use microscope. And the next week you can use microscope to see bacteria. Okay? Okay. This just use microscope to see the bacteria and count them. So you just put bacteria onto slide and count them. But this slide is a special slide, so you can measure volume of the slide and count bacteria in certain volume. Okay, so this is microscopic count. The advantage of this method is very quickly. So you just put bacterial cells into slide and then count directly. Take about 5 minutes, that's it. But this advantage is you cannot separate between dead cell or growing cell. Okay? You cannot distinguish between dead cell and growing cell or living cells. Okay. The other measurement is to measure turbidity. Okay. You know that when you grow bacteria in liquid media, okay, when in liquid media, usually it starts with liquid media. Liquid media without bacterial cells is clear. But if you put bacteria in there, bacteria divide themselves and then make it turbid. Okay, if they're more turbid or more cloudy, that means more bacterial cells. Okay, so you can measure number of bacteria as turbidity. The disadvantage of this measurement is the same as direct count, because we cannot distinguish between dead cell or living cell, because all cells may be cloudy or turbid. Okay. For this method, we call viable cell count. Viable cell count. Okay, let me measure viable cell or living cells. Okay, viable cells or living cells. Okay, you know that one bacteria, when they grow, they have to multiply themselves to 2 cells. Okay, 2 cells growing to form 4 cells. 4 cells divided and then form 8 cells. Okay? But if you put all the cells in solid media, they don't they cannot suspend, so they form colony. Okay. One colony originates from one cell. Okay. So if you put 10 cells, okay, on this plate, 10 cells multiply, and then the next day you will see how many colonies on this plate. 10 colonies. But each colony have many million cells. Okay, but each colony originates from one cell. Okay, so from this method, you can determine cells that can reproduce themselves. That means living cell. Because if cells live, they cannot multiply, they cannot form colony. Okay, so these are viable cell count. This method counts only cells that can multiply themselves. That means they measure living cells only. By count colony. So we call colony forming unit or CD3. That means colony that form from one cell. Okay. You will do this count in the lab. Okay. The method that used for colony count is separated into two methods: spread plate and pour plate. Okay. Spread plate is just spread the bacterial cells that we want to count on the surface of a plate. Okay, and the next day you count number of colonies. Okay, so the colony will be on the surface of a phase. If you count and then you count, okay, you have 20 colonies. That means how many cells that you put on the first day? 20 cells. Okay, but on 20 colony you have only 20 cells or not? No, there are million of cells. Okay, one colony have million of cells, but originate from one cell. Okay. Okay. The other method is pour plate. Pour plate is just put bacterial suspension on agar, on plate, and then you put agar. Melted agar. That is the agar medium that's still in liquefied form. See, you know that agar have the characteristic that they solidify at 40 degrees Celsius, but liquefy at 100 degrees Celsius. So you put agar on 100 degrees Celsius, they will liquefy. So in this liquefied medium, you can pour it. Okay? You can pour liquefied medium into the plate, and then the medium will mix with bacterial suspension that you want to count and set it down. After it's settled, colony can form. But in this part, bacteria can form colony upper and lower media. I mean the upper on the surface and also in the both media. Okay, let's check away. Five breaks, okay? Any questions you should ask? โ ยังทำอยู่เนาะไม่ยากเนาะเดี๋ยวพรุ่งนี้เราจะมีแบบเรื่องของการใช้นอกนะคะก็จะเป็นแบบแรกของเราก็เสร็จ11เรียนตอนเช้าเสร็จ12เรียนตอนบ่ายนะคะบ่ายครึ่งเสร็จ11 9 โมงนะคะแล้วก็พรุ่งนี้ก็มาเอาไม่มาซื้อหนังสือแหละนะพรุ่งนี้เนาะเดี๋ยวจะได้พี่เขาวางไว้ที่โต๊ะนะคะหรือว่ารวมกันในกลุ่มแล้วก็เอามาให้แต่จากก็ยังไม่รู้หรอกว่าราคาเท่าไหร่นะคะเดี๋ยวพรุ่งนี้ดูนะคะให้พี่เขามาในทางในทีวีด้วยค่ะThe last topic for today is bacterial metabolism. Alright. I think this topic you learn it from biochemistry, right? So I think it's very easy for you guys. Okay. Because you got an A or B for biochemistry, right? When we talk about metabolism, we mean anabolism and catabolism process. Okay. In catabolism process, substrates or nutrients are broken down and release energies. Okay, are broken down into smaller molecules and release of energy. These energies are used for anabolic process. Anabolic process is the process of making macromolecules from simple molecules. Okay, simple molecule is the nutrients or substrates that broken down in categories. Okay, so when we talk about metabolisms, we mean anabolisms and catabolism. In catabolisms, energy is produced, and in anabolisms, energy is used for making components, cell components. Okay. Energy is needed in living cells, especially in bacteria. Okay, in bacteria they need energies for active transport. You remember last topic I talked about active transport, the process that bacteria pass nutrients or some chemicals into cells, sodium or potassium into cells. They use energy because the sample going from lower concentration into higher concentration. Okay. This energy is from ATP or from catabolic process. Energy is also used for movement of bacteria, for motility of bacteria. Okay. And also energy is used for making cellular components, making peptidoglycan or phospholipid bilayer or DNA. They need energy to synthesis all these compounds. Okay. In bacteria, there are three processes of biochemical mechanism for energy production. Or maybe in some cases we see two processes in respiration and fermentation. But in respiration, we divide into two groups, aerobic and aerobic respiration. Okay. So energy can be produced by three mechanisms: aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, and fermentation. What is the difference between these three mechanisms? I think this one you learn from biochemistry. The same as in human. Okay. In human, when we make energy, a lot of energy is produced by aerobic respiration, right? In some part of body, we use fermentation and produce lactic acid. They call lactic acid fermentation. In some muscle, right? In bacteria, the same. When they live in oxygen in atmosphere, they use aerobic respiration. But in some bacteria, they can use anaerobic respiration or fermentation when there is no oxygen in that environment. Okay, let's talk about that later. In aerobic respiration, the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration is the terminal electron accepted. In aerobic respiration, bacteria use oxygen as terminal electron accepted, while in anaerobic they use other compounds, not oxygen. For example, they use nitrate, sulfate, carbon dioxide as oxygen acceptor. Okay. The process that they use oxygen as electron acceptor is the process of electron transport chain. Remember, in electron transport chain that carries electron through several types of redox compounds. And then at the final, oxygen used as electron acceptor we call aerobic respiration. Okay. So in aerobic respiration, there are three pathways in this process. First pathway is glycolysis. Glycolysis means lysis means lyse. So, okay, for example, bacteria use glucose as carbon source, so they have to metabolize glucose and produce energy or ATP. So glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid, okay, in this pathway glycolysis. And then pyruvic acid change to acetyl-CoA, and then go to Krebs cycle or TCA cycle or tricarboxylic acid cycle. In this cycle, produce a lot of ATP, electron acceptor. For example, NADH, FADH, ATP, GTP, something like that. And then this NAD, FADH go to electron transport chain. Okay. Talk in detail. Okay. The first pathway is glycolysis. In glycolysis is oxidation of glucose into pyruvic acid. Glucose is 6 carbon, pyruvic acid has 3 carbon. So one glucose forms 2 pyruvic acid. Okay. Besides pyruvic acid, NADH and ATP are formed in this pathway. Okay, I think this pathway is generated that in bacteria there are several pathways of glycolysis. This is common pathway and commonly found in many kinds of bacteria. In Escherichia coli, Staphylococcus, something like that. Glucose, 6 carbon are broken down into pyruvic acid. This pathway called Emmett-Meyerhoff-Panna pathway, or EMP. In this pathway, one glucose produces 2 pyruvic acid and 2 ATP and 2 NADH or reduced NAD. And then, in many bacteria, besides Emmett-Meyerhoff-Panna's pathway for glycolysis, they have another kind of glycolysis pathway. For example, in bacteria named Pseudomonas, has inner-Dudolov pathway. And in bacteria named Bifidobacterium, they have phospholipase pathway. Okay, you don't have to memorize this pathway because I think that you learn it from biochemistry. Okay. This is Emmett-Meyerhoff pathway, Emmett-Meyerhoff-Panna's pathway, and this shows a hexose monophosphate pathway. And this is an inner-Dudolov pathway, and the last one is phospholipase pathway. Okay. From this pathway, the end products are pyruvic acid. Okay? Whether it's Emmett-Meyerhoff-Panna's inner-Dudolov or phospholipase pathway, the byproducts or end products is pyruvic acid. Okay? Then pyruvic acid will be changed to acetyl-CoA. Acetyl-CoA is 2 carbon. So 1 carbon is turned to carbon dioxide. Released as carbon dioxide. From this, acetyl-CoA will go to Krebs cycle. Sometimes we call tricarboxylic acid cycle or TCA cycle. We call Krebs cycle because the scientists who found this cycle named Krebs. So we named it after his name, Krebs cycle. Okay. In this pathway of acetyl-CoA, cooperate with oxaloacetic acid and form citric acid, and move from citric acid to ketonic acid, succinic acid. This pathway produces this one, 2 ATP, 6 NADH, 2 reduce NAD, and reduce FAD or FADH, and 4 carbon dioxide. Okay, 2 ATP, okay, bacteria can use 6 NADH and 2 FAD goes to electron transport chain as electron acceptor and electron donor in electron transport chain or ETC. Okay, from this pathway, terminal electron acceptor, this one, the wavelength is oxygen. So we call aerobic respiration. See, from one NADH or reduced NAD can produce 3 ATP. One reduced FAD produce 2 ATP. So in electron transport chain, they produce a lot of ATP. Okay, that's why when bacteria grow in aerobic respiration, they grow very fast because they produce a lot of ATP. They have a lot of energy to burn up. Okay. All right. This table shows you that when pathway occurs in bacteria. Bacteria is prokaryotic cells. So all pathway of glycolysis, Krebs cycles occur in cytoplasm. But electron transport chain occur in cytoplasmic membrane or plasma membrane of bacterial cells. In aerobic respiration, oxygen was used as electron acceptor. Okay? The difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration is that in an aerobic respiration, not oxygen was used as electron acceptor. That's all. They used nitrate or sulfate or carbon dioxide as electron acceptor. So end product is different. Okay. When bacteria use oxygen as electron acceptor, water is produced. Okay, water is produced in this pathway. But if bacteria use other compounds other than oxygen, for example, they use nitrate as electron acceptor. Nitrite or nitrogen gas is produced. When they use sulfate as electron acceptor, hydrogen sulfide or sulfur granules are produced. When they use carbon dioxide as electron acceptor, methane is produced. With different kind of end products when they use different kind of electron acceptor. These are the names of bacteria that use other compounds as electron acceptors other than oxygen. That means that this bacteria can process anaerobic respiration. Okay. So anaerobic respiration will be found in organisms such as obligate anaerobe or facultative anaerobe. Got it? Okay. In aerobic respiration, you will find this pathway in obligate anaerobes. Okay, but in anaerobic respiration, this process you can find in obligate anaerobe or facultative anaerobe, because they don't use oxygen as electron acceptor. Can you correlate it aerobic and anaerobic organism with this pathway? Okay, another process is fermentation. In fermentation, the difference from respiration, because in this pathway they didn't use oxygen, but they didn't use external electron acceptor also. They use internal organic molecule as electron acceptor. Okay, so we call incomplete oxidation of glucose. They use organic compound in pathway as terminal electron acceptor. So we don't have Krebs cycle or electron transport chain. So small amount of ATP are produced in this process. they produce other compounds. For example, carbon dioxide, acid, something like that, or ethanol as the end product. Okay, this one of fermentation pathway. That's one of. So there are many fermentation pathways. This is one of fermentation pathway. Glucose, okay, go to glycolysis pathway and form pyruvic acid, and use pyruvic acid as electron acceptor to produce lactic acid. This pathway is called lactic acid fermentation. Some bacteria, they change pyruvic acid to acetaldehyde and use acetaldehyde as the electron receptor to form ethanol or ethyl alcohol. This pathway is called ethanol fermentation. This table compares between aerobic and anaerobic respiration and fermentation. Okay, pathway that involved in aerobic and anaerobic pathway is the glycolysis, TCA, and electron transport chain. While in fermentation, there's only glycolysis pathway. Okay, and electron acceptor in aerobic respiration, oxygen as terminal electron acceptor. Anaerobic use nitrate sulfate or carbon dioxide. In fermentation, they know external electron acceptor use organic molecule in the pathway. So ATP, there is only two ATP produced from fermentation. Aerobic respiration produces a lot of ATP. Highest ATP come from aerobic respiration. In aerobic, it varies, depends on what kind of electron receptor we use. Alright. In bacteria, many kinds of bacteria can use molecules other than glucose as carbon source. Some bacteria can use lipid or protein as carbon source for produce energy or ATP. The bacteria that can use lipid as a carbon source, they have to break lipid into smaller molecules. So they have to have enzyme lipase for degrade lipid into smaller molecules as glycerol and fatty acid. Lipase is extracellular enzyme. So the bacteria, this bacteria release lipase outside cells and break lipid into glycerol and fatty acid. And then glycerol and fatty acid enter cells. Then the cells can break all these things into smaller and smaller and put energy from this metabolism. Okay. For example, in some bacteria can use glycerol, okay, lipase as the enzyme for break lipid into glycerol and fatty acid. Glycerols enter to glycolysis pathway as glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate or diacetyl dihydroxyacetylphosphate. Fatty acid is go through beta oxidation and released as acetyl-CoA. Remember, fatty acid, they go through beta oxidation and then they broken down through carbon atom to carbon atom. Okay, as acetyl-CoA, and then acetyl-CoA go to Krebs cycle. So bacteria that have lipase, for example, Staphylococcus can produce lipase. So this bacteria can use lipase as a carbon source. That's why this bacteria can live on your skin and use fatty acid on your skin as carbon source and make scar or nong. Some bacteria can use protein as a carbon source. The bacteria that can use protein as a carbon source produce enzyme called proteinase or peptidase for break protein into amino acid or short chain of amino acid peptides, something like that. And then they use another pathway for broken down amino acid into smaller molecules. Okay. For example, they use reamination process for remove amino group from amino acid. Some bacteria can use decarboxylase enzyme for decarboxylation of carboxylic group from amino acid. Some bacteria have dehydrogenase to process dehydrogenation. Okay. So amino acids are broken down into smaller and smaller molecules, and then each compounds go to different kind of pathway. For example, some amino acid alanine broken down into 3 carbons, so they go into pyruvic acid. And then pyruvic acid can go to Krebs cycle, something like that. Or amino acids such as glutamic acid or aspartic acid, they can go to Krebs cycle. So this picture shows you that bacteria can use protein or carbohydrate or lipid as a carbon source for making energy. Depends on what kind of enzyme they have. Okay. Alright. That's all I told you about catabolism. Okay. As I told you before, bacteria have both catabolism and anabolism process. Catabolism is the process that produces energy and broken down macromolecules into simple molecules. And the simple molecules will be used as precursor for making components, for example, cell wall, cell membrane, in anabolic process or anabolism. These are the metabolism for produce macromolecule. Okay, for example, process for produce polysaccharide, such as peptidoglycan. I just use model because if you want to learn about polysaccharide biosynthesis, you have to have about 6 hours. So I just pass it. It's a long story, okay? And for lipid biosynthesis, for example, if you want, if bacteria want to make cytoplasmic membrane, for example, cytoplasmic membrane, for phospholipid bilayer. They have to make it from, they have to make glycerol and fatty acid to make triglyceride. Okay? So a long story, just know that bacteria can produce macromolecule from these precursors. So these precursors come from catabolic process and also amino acid. Okay, they can use precursor from phosphate pathway or acetyl-CoA or enzyme pathway as precursor for amino acid synthesis. Also for DNA, purine of DNA. Okay, that's very long story. So just know that then also another process called anabolic process, okay, in bacteria. In bacteria, as I told you, there's two processes of catabolic and anabolic. Many pathways, okay, many pathways that can move from, okay, for example, carbohydrate. Okay. If there are a lot of carbohydrate in the cells, they use as energy source. And when they make enough energy source, they use this carbohydrate to make a storage cell as a granules or storage form. Also the same as protein, nucleic acid, and lipid. So we call bidirectional process. Bidirectional process or amphibolic process. So when they have enough energy, they make storage. And when they less energy, they move from storage and catabolic and make energy. Alright. I think that's all for today.
Oho, 2 ชั่วโมง